Thank you, Miranda, and hello, everyone. It's great to see you all today. I kind of feel like I should have prepared a quiz or something to pit the two sides of the audience against each other, but you're safe. You're just going to get me talking about how we see Composable and that concept helping some of the client sectors that we work in. I'll start with some background, and I've got a few examples to work through based on our experience and our work. So this first section is titled The Composable Enterprise, because it's important to remember that composability is not just a website thing. It's a pattern that we can use across business systems and processes. We regularly meet clients who have challenges with their digital estates because they've become fragmented. After years of buying into monolithic systems in different areas of their business, they've ended up with silos of data, of experience, and of technology. Their systems might have quite tightly coupled architectures where there are tight, direct connections between front ends and back ends. And those might turn out to be fragile connections for them. And that duplication between these silos is often because it was easier to just buy something new than it was to share in this old model. And that can lead to inconsistencies in how they present their brand and between the user experiences in different bits of the website or customer portals. And the fragmentation they see also tends to increase management costs. Duplication, where things end up being paid for twice, or parts of these big monolithic systems that are bought but never end up getting used. And those both cost time and resources. I don't think any of the challenges there are that surprising, really. They're things that have been exposed over many years. And I think we see the drivers coming to the fore to fix them, boiling down to a few key reasons. We want to be able to scale more easily to cope with load. We want to present consistent content and experiences, and we want to do that across devices and channels. We want to be able to adjust our technical solutions in line with the pretty rapid pace of technical change. And fundamentally, we want to be able to move away from silos and promote interoperability and get the best out of all of the systems that we invest in. And it's not just Unrivaled that are saying this. It's a trend that Gartner are seeing when they speak to organizations across the world. They're saying here that they see a majority of organizations focusing on composable concepts as a key objective for their futures. So web channels and digital experience are just one of these pieces, these Lego blocks, as Dave said earlier, in the overall composable enterprise. And in this world, we want them to be highly scalable and better connected pieces, better able to deliver excellence to customers. There is a mindset change to think about here, though. Rather than focusing on acquiring that all-encompassing, best-of-breed, monolithic system that maybe ticks all the possible feature boxes, and looks best on paper, the focus is shifting towards the idea that we want the experiences users receive across all their interactions to be more consistent, and where the technology choices we make are the enabler of those digital connections that Paige spoke about. And that moves us towards a great phrase that one of my colleagues has been using, the concept of the best of need architecture, turning a project's focus towards these smaller building blocks, systems that try and do one thing well and critically have integration as a first-class feature. They're designed to be composed together. So businesses can pick tools that match their needs now, but be confident that as those needs change over time, they can swap parts out and adjust the systems without having to tear everything down and start again. And as I think we've seen this morning, Sitecore are promoting a really strong approach here. They've addressed the idea that flexibility and composability are going to be the future for our systems. And their slide, I think Dave's last slide of his product pillars versus the kind of the roadmap and products is really important here. Moving from that left-hand original diagram that he had where there was just one big box for each of their pillars towards the future where we have multiple composable pieces. This model, I think, suits more evolutionary, quicker change, delivering results faster, and with lower risk, hopefully, than the sort of big bang change that might have been considered previously. Because this pick and mix aspect of composables means we have a lot of choice here. Sitecore have a range of products, each of which may or may not fit a given project. So we get to pick that best of need set of components to suit particular pieces of work. So let's try and put a bit of real-world context around some of these concepts. I've got 3 examples to talk through quickly here. They're kind of blending information from real-world conversations we've had with a variety of customers across some sectors. And I'll try and put a bit of context around each one and compare the kind of the legacy and possible future states for them. I don't think any of these problems are really unique to these sectors, but they're interesting examples. So first up, the utilities sector. Businesses like power or maybe refuse collection. With apologies to them, broadly, these are not organizations who customers are necessarily excited about talking to. So they want to have a focus on providing smooth experiences, making a tedious job like paying your water bill or renting a skip as simple as possible. So they tend to have that customer service focus, and their services are built upon potentially quite specialized and complex internal systems. Those might be legacy systems, sometimes with roots that go all the way back to the pen and paper and phone interactions of the past. So they may well be running change programs to modernize those as well. Where they're talking about attracting new customers, there's a lot of data gathering going on to power back-end processes, credit checking, for example. And serving existing customers is often about surfacing data from those back-end systems in order to present a good task-focused user experience. They want to be able to enable customers to self-serve as much as they can. So reducing friction and hence reducing administrative costs is important there. Fewer tasks that end up at call centers, perhaps. And their drivers for technical change tend to be based on resilience and coupling and flexibility, because uptime is important to them. They want their services available whenever a client chooses to use them. And the tight coupling of legacy systems has become difficult there. Change is harder when your old web application talks directly to a back-end database, for example. And they want to be able to change and adapt at pace, to move with markets and regulatory change. So small, efficient change processes are a focus. And they also have to deal with some newer businesses, potentially, that have grown up as competitors without some of that technical debt, with more focus on the kind of digital maturity things from the get-go. So they often find themselves trying to improve on web estates that have disparate areas like this, where siloed separation between different systems exists between things that power their websites. where some systems are stuck with those tightly coupled integrations, and where there are still some manual tasks involved sometimes, and where choices might make scaling for resilience more difficult. A more composable approach can have benefits here. A collection of API-first tools that are focused on doing one thing well, brought together to produce a newer digital estate, with APIs joining together with low-code tooling, things like Azure Logic apps, or standards like GraphQL. A headless CMS that allows content to be produced for key channels, mainly the web, perhaps, but also reusable across apps and chat tools and similar things. And a web interface built on modern JavaScript frameworks to give consistent user interface and user experience across portals and client devices. It can also make more use of that client-side code to handle logic and state, to take burden off of back-end servers, and do that through integrating with very task-focused APIs for the business. They can provide a standardized interface to those back-end systems, allowing the web and the back-end to evolve at their own pace by reducing the coupling problem. Swapping out one of these composable systems becomes easier. And maybe that combination of APIs and the low-code connectivity allows more effective standardization of some of the business process stuff. Maybe allowing the same address search APIs to be used by both mobile and desktop apps and tools and so on. But I think there's some different core challenges in higher education. Unlike utilities, here, day-to-day, the business of teaching is perhaps not the thing that's driving most of the significant challenges for their web systems. That tends to come from the annual application and clearing process, a small part of the year where there can be a very high increase in load because lots of potential students are trying to secure places to study. And staying stable under these conditions while still giving a good experience to users is key. Come on, clicker. In one way, potentially they're quite lucky here because they know fairly accurately where their periods of highest load are likely to come. And planning ahead can help, but it doesn't remove all the problems there. These are organizations who may also be aware how future change to regulatory things might shorten these windows and increase those pressured times. They're organizations where perhaps the IT function has been asked to spend as little as it can to deliver some of these features because of tight budgets. And that situation may well have been made worse recently with the challenges for international students in recent years and by the massive disruption that's come from COVID to teaching. So they have some fairly obvious goals around wanting more people to investigate the courses they offer and convert interest. But they want to try and do that with cost-efficient technology, keeping costs down for that scaling they know they need to do each year. Ideally, they want patterns adopted to have a long lifetime because they're flexible enough to change and adapt over time. And they probably still have silo challenges. On top of the idea that many of the students they're looking to attract are probably quite used to very modern digital trends. They're more likely to be consuming content from TikTok than printing out a PDF to fill in a form for an application, for example. So in their old world, those siloed monolithic applications that are used across a web estate can become a barrier to efficient scaling. When big peaks hit, each thing needs handling differently. And users might see inconsistent experience because of lack of standardization. Maybe bits of this don't work so well if you're looking at the site on a phone or a tablet. And there may be missing bits of integration that lead to manual processes as well. And I think composability can improve things here in a number of ways, on top of that core of flexibility we've mentioned. And the first is better approaches to the scaling. Separating out delivery using the Jamstack technology that Dave mentioned for the web front end can cope more efficiently with these load peaks, rendering content before it's required with tools like static site generation, for example. And doing more of the personalization and the client-side work, doing more of the personalization and work client-side can take load off back-end servers again. Combining this with efficient caching and so on can lead to more load being served with fewer servers and hence fewer cost. And the integration for applications can make more use of asynchronous behaviors. When an applicant submits some information, some immediate validation can get done, but the rest of the work can get queued, allowing back-end systems to smooth out more of these peaks of load and still provide a smooth and responsive user interface for the people who are using the sites and apps. And maybe that API-first approach allows small projects to quickly target some of these latest fashions amongst the digitally savvy applicants, perhaps having voice services for checking application state or something like that. So the final thing I want to talk about is a different challenge of scale, that of organizations who want to deliver content across continents. If your business is split, for example, between the UK and Australia, in the past there have been some fairly significant challenges with giving a good user experience for everyone with a traditional DXP. So the businesses we're thinking of here are providing services over wide geographical areas. They might be worrying about translating content between languages, addressing how rules and regulations differ between countries. And they might be organizations that have grown by acquisition, so there's a high chance of duplication in internal systems. And maybe they're less likely to look at those latest social media trends as key to getting their messages across. Unsurprisingly, and kind of similarly to before, there's going to be a strong focus on retaining customers, but also marketing to new prospects. And this needs to happen with an eye to the cost, the operational costs of delivering content at global scale. It's very easy to spend huge amounts of money there. So that means they need efficient content efficient technology for presenting their content, and mechanisms for content production that cope with these issues of translating across borders and adapting to the different regions they serve. And all of that needs to happen within a brand framework. They want freedom for their local editors to produce good local content and campaigns, but it needs to happen without there being a kind of free-for-all. So that and the kind of cross-border constraints can be challenges for them. And across the globe, their IT landscapes can look quite variable. Sometimes very different approaches are being taken to solving the same problems in different regions. And maybe there have been some partially successful attempts to put shared or global infrastructure in place. And it can be hard to maintain control of brand presentation in this model with these disparate tools. And it costs a lot in infrastructure resource. And I think edge delivery is the technology that can really make a difference here. It makes it much simpler to have a central content management system with all the regional organizations being able to use it, whose content can be served globally. There's no longer a need to host delivery servers in different continents in order to give good web performance. Edge caching technology can do much of this for us automatically. And it can be combined with edge or client-side personalization technology to deliver the most appropriate content in different regions and to help localize campaigns. And that combination of the central content management system alongside centralizing identity and management for the security for the organization can make it easier for the organization to delegate responsibility for editing tasks and content maintenance whilst maintaining that global brand correctly. And they're likely to have to deal with some situations where they do need to keep some of these duplicated back-end systems. But that low-code middleware can help here as well by providing routing so that data ends up in the right places automatically. So that's 3 high-level examples of places where we see these more composable approaches being of direct benefit to customers and sectors we work with. The takeaways from this, I think, well, firstly, composable is not just for the web. Yes, it is a great way to create flexible and scalable front ends, but combining those API-first systems with low-code connectivity can create more flexible systems across businesses. And I think, as we've seen earlier in Dave's speech, Sitecore have some really great tools here and a great vision for bringing these tools to market. Their recent announcements really cement the idea that they're leaning into this concept of flexibility and choice for organizations to help you find your best of need setup. So we're excited by these options and how we can use them to help bring unrivaled excellence to you and your customers. Now, a quick scene change.